Hello and welcome to the Pitcher Nail Down. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Scott Mailwick at Sports 25 to Life. And we got a 10-game slate tonight. So that means we got 20 pitchers in action. We're going to be talking top to bottom, all the guys, if we're playing them in cash games, if they're tournament-only options, if we're avoiding them, if we're stacking. I'm going to give you the entire rundown of all these guys here. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start off at the top here with Max Scherzer, most expensive pitcher on both sites, $10,900 on FanDuel, 11.5 on DraftKings. And I mean, if you're looking at his all the factors today, he's a minus 147 favorite, which is decent, but he is in Arizona, 8-run total. He's a fly ball pitcher, 44% so far this year. So I'm not saying that Scherzer's not in play for me, but I think that there's better options for cash games. I'm certainly targeting him in some tournaments because Arizona, we know, at times can certainly be beat. They strike out quite a bit against right-handed pitching still. Almost 20% at 19.6%. But they're actually 11th in league against righties overall. So for me, Scherzer's a tournament option. How about you?
Yeah, that's the way I feel at that price. I mean, if you got down under 10K, you could probably consider him a little bit more in cash games. But all the way up there, it's really tough against such a good offense in a hitter's park. It's just not really an ideal situation today. He's a decent favorite, though, which is nice. But I agree with you. I prefer him as a tournament GPP play today. I just don't want to pay that price for someone that I don't feel really great about.
Yeah, and a couple more factors go in there. You get 91 degrees there. They're expecting a game time. Wind blowing out 6 to 11 miles an hour. So that right there, hot weather, wind blowing out, fly ball pitchers. A lot of things going against Scherzer as well.
Yeah.
So another thing going against Scherzer is the fact that Zach Greinke is a minus 220 favorite. He's sitting at $10,300 on FanDuel, $10,200 on DraftKings, and he makes for one of the two options I'm really looking at in cash games today. He's a fair price, considerably cheaper than Scherzer on DraftKings, which makes that an obvious decision for me.
Yep.
And he's obviously got the best offense in the game behind him, especially the number one offense against a righty, and also not a lot of left-handed bats that could pick on Tom Kohler, who's getting mashed by lefties, who gave up 3 home runs to one man the other day. So a lot of chances for run support, a lot of chances for him to just mow down this lineup. And I mean, really the only guy you're even worried a little bit about is Giancarlo Stanton coming off a day off from yesterday. But I don't think Greinke has a whole lot of trouble with this Marlins lineup tonight.
No, I've been targeting pitchers against Miami most of this week, especially right-handed ones. They just don't have enough lefties in their lineup to really punish righties for making mistakes sometimes. And like you said, Stanton's really the only guy that scares you. I mean, D. Gordon's having a great season, but he's not going to just destroy you by himself. And they just haven't really gotten any of their other bats going.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely the strongest cash game play here. Ridiculous favorite. He's been striking out a decent number of people, as usual, not really walking anyone. I mean, he's just been fantastic. He's been better than Kershaw this year, and he's got the Dodgers offense behind him, like you mentioned, that's been hitting pretty well. I mean, there's really nothing not to like here.
Yeah, and you consider the 7-run total with him being that big of a favorite. That tells you right there, Vegas is expecting the Dodgers to score most of those runs. I haven't seen the team totals, but Miami's team total has to be one of the lowest, if not the lowest on the night.
Yeah, it's 4-3, I believe.
Yeah, so there you go. 3-run total. I mean, that's about as low as it gets. A lot of things going in Greinke's favor. I absolutely love him tonight. And, I mean, they did get one left-handed bat back in Christian Yelich, but he hasn't done much since he's come back. And, I mean, until I see something from him, I'm not concerned about him at all. And he's certainly not a guy that's going to keep me from playing Zach Greinke tonight.
Yeah.
So, all right, so he makes for the consensus number one option. He's certainly in play for tournaments as well, but he's going to be my cash game pitcher or my SP1 on DraftKings. Moving on down to the next pitcher here, Jacob deGrom, $9,200 on FanDuel. His DraftKings price is $8,100, so considerable discount there. You've obviously got upside with him. We know the Cubs like to strike out 25.9% of the time against right-handed pitching. A solid team ISO 146. They're right around league average at 308 WOBA. So this is a team that has a lot of power, but also has a lot of upside for you if you're targeting them with opposing pitchers. So deGrom, you got to like his upside here, but he is a dog with John Lester being on the other side. But a 9-run total here is really interesting to me. I think a lot of that is because the wind is gusty and blowing out to center. So that kind of hurts the prospects of both these pitchers. And I was really surprised to see this big of a total with these two pitchers on the mound this morning.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the wind's blowing out, almost 20 miles an hour to center right now.
Yep.
I mean, that's not really a condition you want to pitch in Wrigley.
No.
Especially when it's warm, and I think it's supposed to get up to like almost 70 today. So, I mean, that's going to be a hitter's game.
Yep.
Out of the two pitchers, I prefer Lester. Decent favorite in this game. He's thrown 3 really, really strong games in a row. I think he's pitched 7 innings in back-to-back games, 2 wins in a row. He had 10 strikeouts a couple games ago. He's cooled off a little bit in the strikeout front, but it looks like he's getting himself together. I'm probably going to avoid deGrom as much as I can. I like the strikeout upside, but as the underdog in this game with a pretty big run total, I just don't feel great about it. Lester, on the other hand, I think is a really strong GBV play as the favorite. No one in this Mets lineup really just like terrifies you. And if he's pitching well, I mean, he keeps the ball on the ground a decent amount. I think he can get through this win, but not a guy I want to run out in cash games either. I mean, I'm going to try and avoid this wind blowing out the center at Wrigley as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this game many, many times. Wind in Wrigley spells disaster even for good pitchers. So, I mean, that right there, that 9-run total, like you said. Lester's a minus 141 favorite, so I think he does make for the better play here. And he's priced under 10K on both sites. He's at 91 on FanDuel, 97 on DraftKings. So a fine price, but like you said, tournament only due to all those factors. And it's humid. They say 52% relative humidity today. So like you said, warm factors, wind blowing out, not something you want to be messing with in cash games here tonight. So
Right.
All right, let's move on down to the next guy. You got Shelby Miller at $9,100 on FanDuel, 83 on DraftKings. And he's an interesting play. He had a monster game last time out against Philly. It was a really popular play that night. Complete game shutout with 3 hits. Obviously, facing Philly at Turner Field is different than facing the Reds at Great American Ballpark. Way bigger park shift there. And he pitched well against the Reds last time in Turner Field a couple weeks ago. 7 innings, gave up 3 runs, 2 of them earned, had 9 Ks. So, you know, the Reds are a team with Devin Mesoraco maybe in the lineup tonight, maybe back to catching. A lot of speculation. They say maybe season-ending surgery, maybe he plays. Who knows what's going on there, but that's another bat to worry about if he's there. I think he makes for a fine tournament option, but he's also a pretty big underdog here in Cincinnati. Mike Leake's been pitching well. Mike Leake's a minus 135 favorite here. 7.5 run total, though, says despite the factors in Cincinnati, I mean, that's saying that they don't think there's going to be a whole lot of runs scored here, which is interesting. So I think that if you're going to have one of the two, I think that Mike Leake's got to be your option because they're similar pitchers right now. They're keeping the ball on the ground. Neither one blowing you away with strikeouts. Obviously, Shelby Miller with the higher upside, but you got to take the guy that's the favorite at home here, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it. I don't really, truly believe in Mike Leake, but he's been really good.
Yeah.
3 of the last, all 5 of his last 5 starts, he's gone at least 7 innings.
Yep.
3 of the last 5, he's gone 8+. He's not a big strikeout guy, but he did throw up 9 against the Cubs the other day.
Yep. He's just been really efficient with his pitch counts, is what it is.
Yeah, he's staying in he's going between 90 and 105 and pitching 8 innings. It's crazy. I mean, he's having a lot of batted ball success, which is always good for a pitcher that pitches the contact like he does. You mentioned the 7.5 run total is the biggest thing for me. I mean, for Leake, he feels like a pretty strong cash game play to me just because, like you said, he's been really efficient. He's pitching deep into games, which is great for just getting points, even if you're not striking out guys. I mean, he's a big favorite in this game, low total. I mean, I'm thinking we see another decent game out of him where he goes 6 or 7 innings, gives up a couple runs, racks up 3 or 4 strikeouts. I mean, he's not going to be anything special, but especially on FanDuel or, I mean, even DraftKings, his price isn't that bad. They're both pretty solid prices. I think you can get some value out of him. I don't love him. I don't think there's any reason really to throw him in GPPs because he doesn't have that massive strikeout upside. He's going to need the win to have a really nice day. So he's a cash game play for me. I like. I can't remember what his name is now that we were just talking about before him.
Shelby Miller?
Yeah, I like Miller a little bit more for GPPs. He has more upside. Sorry about that.
Agreed.
So if I'm going GPP in that game, I'll take the underdog there. I feel like Miller's got much better upside in this game. Cincinnati has a lot of bats that are left-handed for the most part. The wind's blowing out to left there, so it takes away some of that power a little bit, especially with a guy like Jay Bruce that pulls absolutely everything. I mean, you got to worry about Votto going the other way a little bit, but I mean, I'd much rather have faced the Reds with the wind blowing out to left than right because they scare me a little bit more when it's blowing out to right because if you can turn on stuff there, especially Great American Ballpark, that's a pretty high home run park factor already. Yeah. That's a little scary, but Miller has some nice upside with his strikeouts, and I'm going to be playing Leak a decent amount, especially as my starting pitcher too on DraftKings. I don't know if I trust him to run out there as my only starter on FanDuel with the low strikeout upside.
Especially with Greinke on the board tonight.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It makes it really tough, but I think Leak's a pretty solid play if you're trying to load up on bats. I just don't love him.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And like you said, Reds higher strikeout rate, 20% against righties. Braves just 15.6. Actually looks like the lowest in the league against righties. So that right there, Leak not being a big strikeout pitcher, they put the ball in play. That kind of plays into Leak's favor a little bit because he is a contact pitcher, keeps the ball on the ground. But like you said, more upside with Shelby Miller, and I think considerably more. So certainly got to go that route. Now here's a guy that I really like a lot, and that's Garrett Cole. He's $9,000 on FanDuel, $8,900 on DraftKings, and this is a guy with massive upside. This is the kind of guy that you will be targeting. 26.9% strikeout rate, 59.6% ground ball rate. Wasn't particularly good against the Reds last time out. Was a popular play, but now he gets the Phillies, who, yes, they're a bad offense, but somehow much, much better against lefties than they are against righties. Right around league average, which isn't saying much, but it's a big upgrade over almost dead last against righties. Yep. So 16.4% strikeout rate there you don't like, but you like the fact they only have a 107 team ISO. Biggest bats in this order. You got guys like Ryan Howard, lefty, so you got the lefty-lefty matchup there, and you don't like that, but Garrett Cole's got massive, massive upside here, and I love him as, if I'm not playing Greinke in my cash games, he's my number 2 option.
Yeah, it might actually help him a little bit that they don't strike out a ton because his biggest struggle lately has been pitch count. I mean, he's been pitching really well. Outside of that last game, you mentioned he struggled a little bit against Cincinnati. He threw way over 100 pitches in like 5 innings, I want to say. Looks like he was at 103 in 5 innings. So, I mean, he didn't pitch horrible in that game. He gets one more inning, it's a quality start. I mean, not necessarily what we were all looking for in that game, but it's not like he pitched terrible. In the 4 games before that, he was 6+ innings. 2 runs or less, struck out at least 6 guys in every game. I mean, he was looking really good. Problem is 3 of those 4 games he was at exactly 6 innings, and they took him out because of where his pitch count was at because he wasn't going to be able to get through 7 without being up towards 120, 130.
Yeah.
And that's your concern there. But like you said, if he can get into 7 innings and he's getting a decent amount of 3-4 pitch strikeouts, they're putting a couple balls into play early. I mean, he's got a ton of upside, and I could easily strike out 10 guys. In any game he pitches, and if he gets 7 innings under his belt, I mean, they've been hitting behind him for the most part. I think he had 4 wins in his last 5 starts. Yeah. Hasn't been giving up a ton of runs. His ERA is solid. His batting average on balls in play is right around the league averages. It doesn't really look like he's getting lucky too much. He just looks like a really strong play tonight.
Yeah, and outside of games, he's pitched against the Reds twice and struggled at both. Outside of that, 4 other starts, he hasn't allowed more than 1 earned run in any of those. So
yeah, he's looked really good outside of those games.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, and you got to love a little bit of a discount with a guy with such massive upside. So yep. I love Garrett Cole tonight. Really, no one in that Philly lineup that scares me at all. And this is a guy that pitches out of jams really well. I mean, if you watch that Reds game last time out, he had 2nd and 3rd in the first inning, nobody out, managed to get out of it without allowing those guys to score. So I mean, he's a guy that it's almost like he gets better when put in a pressure situation, and
yeah.
None of these Philly guys have much of a chance against him, I don't think. So I definitely like Garrett Cole here. All right, let's move on to our next option here. That's going to be Scott Kazmir. He's $9,000 on FanDuel. And once again, much, much cheaper on DraftKings, $7,100, facing off against Boston in Oakland. So as you look at the Red Sox numbers against lefties, they have not been good. 21.7% strikeout rate, 23rd in the league in WOBA. Nice team ISO of 177, and they do walk 12.7% of times, which you do like. But Kazmir right around league average of walk rate, 7.6%. He's striking out 25.3% of batters, and we've seen a couple times where this Boston lineup just disappears. So they've got big upside, but they're also very beatable. So for me, Kazmir certainly out of play on FanDuel. I'm not even going to play him in tournaments at 9,000 against this lineup, but I do think that on DraftKings at $7,100 that he's certainly a tournament option for me here.
Yeah, I don't mind him in the tournament at all. I think he's a pretty strong option there. Not a guy I'm going to look at in cash games at all. even though Kazmir is a favorite here, I don't feel great about him going against Boston. Pedroia is really good against lefties. Boston's lineup in general has been pretty strong on the young season. Mookie Betts has gotten it going a little bit again over the last few games. He negates Ortiz a little bit because Ortiz isn't great against lefties, but still a guy you got to worry about hitting a home run at any time. I don't really want to pay $9,000 for Kazmir on FanDuel when I could just pay $9,000 for Cole is my biggest thing.
Exactly.
And Cole feels like he has more upside. So as a tournament play, really the only thing he's providing you there is probably a lower ownership percentage. So maybe if you're putting 10, 15 lineups into something, he becomes a guy you can use 2 or 3 times. Because he does have some nice upside here. He's favored. But not a guy that I feel really, really strongly about at all.
No, you like the fact that it's a pitcher's park in Oakland, but looks like wind's blowing out right around 15 miles an hour expected around game time. So
right.
That certainly doesn't help. And he's a guy who gives up a decent amount of fly balls, 37%. A little bit below league average, not a concerning number, but certainly a guy that can be taken deep by some of these big bats here.
Yeah.
All right, moving on next to Jeff Samardzija, the soon-to-be suspended Jeff Samardzija. He's $8,900 on FanDuel, and he's $8,500 on DraftKings. This is the Milwaukee offense that was getting killed early in the season. They finally started to get it going a little bit. They're still 25th in the league against righties, striking out 22% of the time. But those numbers are starting to regress a little bit. They're finally starting to hit the ball. Ryan Braun's starting to come back around. Carlos Gomez is back. He hasn't done much, but that's another bat you got to worry about across the board. And for me, Samardzija just really hasn't looked that good this season. And now that he's going into Miller Park, he had a good game against Detroit last time out. But at the same time, this is the guy who's one of his biggest strengths before this year was his strikeout rate and his ground ball rate. And now both of those really down. 17% strikeout rate, 33% ground ball rate. I don't like either of those factors in Miller Park. But I guess he's a solid tournament option. It's just not a guy, with that price, he's once again right around Garrett Cole. I just don't see myself playing him instead of Garrett Cole tonight.
Yeah, I like him quite a bit for GPPs, actually. We differ a little bit on this one.
Okay.
I think he's looked a lot better lately. He struggled that one day game where no one was in the park at Baltimore really badly, and everyone's kind of felt like that's what he's been doing all season because everyone watched that game because it was the only day game that day.
And you had to watch it because it was weird.
Yeah, exactly. But 3 out of the last 4 games, he's gone at least 6 innings, averaged 7 over those 3 starts, has a win in 2 of the 3, 3 total earned runs over the other 3 starts, 7 strikeouts in 2 of the 3. He's been looking better. I like this matchup quite a bit for him too, actually. All of Milwaukee's best bats are right-handed, and he's still been pretty tough on righties this year. He struggled really badly with lefties. That was his big problem against Baltimore, is the lefties just crushed him. Chris Davis hit a monster blast off of him for, I believe, a 3-run homer. He's always had a problem with power left-handed bats, and Milwaukee doesn't have a lot of that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Ryan Braun, right-handed. Gomez, right-handed. Those are the 2 guys that have really been carrying them lately. Segura doesn't really scare me. I think he's a really strong GPP play. Not a favorite is the biggest problem for me, but that's why I have him as a GPP play. He's going to be a guy that, much like Kazmir, is one of those guys where if I'm going to make a bunch of GPP lineups today, he's going to be in a couple more than Kazmir, probably.
Okay.
Just because I know Cole's going to be pretty heavily owned. We know Greinke's going to be heavily owned. There'll be some people out there with Lester and stuff like that. So, I can't see Samardzija getting over like 5-10% ownership today, and that makes him a pretty good GPP play for me against a team everyone would have played him against 6 days ago.
Yeah, and that's a good point. This is a team that they do have some big bats, like you said, but no lefties that you're really targeting. And at the same time, this is a team that swings a lot. That's why they got big bats. So they do strike out a lot. He's got that upside. So, yeah, you might open my eyes to him a little bit. So maybe I will get some Samardzija exposure now. All right, next up we have Rick Porcello. He's $8,000 on FanDuel, $7,700 on DraftKings. And this is an interesting one because obviously he's pitching at Pitcher's Park here. He's a slight underdog. And as we know, the A's one of the better teams in the league against right-handed pitching. In fact, they're 6th in the league. Nice 159 team ISO. They don't strike out much, 16.9%. Porcello's strikeout rate's been solid this year at 21.2. But that hasn't been that's higher than what he's been doing throughout his career. So, I think that he's an interesting option. But at the same time, just not a ton of upside with this guy against a team that doesn't strike out a lot. They put the ball in play. And, I think he's certainly in play for GPPs. but not a guy that I'll have a ton of exposure to here.
Yeah, he's a guy I'm looking at more for cash games than GPPs, honestly. I mean, it looks like he's going to be right around 5-6 strikeouts a game for the most part, which is strong, but he's not going to be a guy that gives you 11 or 12 as a guy that pitches to contact quite a bit. But, I mean, he's had that Boston offense behind him that's looked great lately. He's pitching pretty deep into games. He's gone 7 innings in both of his last 2 starts. Has an 8-inning game against Washington the other day. I think he's an okay cash game play. Not quite enough of a discount for me to like really aggressively target him in cash games, but yeah. I think if you need to save a little bit from Cole or something like that in cash, he's an alternative, not a guy I'm like super excited about playing. But I
he's
mean,
like
with the
Mike Leake in a different jersey.
Yeah, that's a
little bit more strikeout upside.
Yeah, he has a little bit more strikeout upside, and he's facing a little bit tougher of an offense. Oakland's been pretty decent against righties so far, but yeah, I think that's a pretty good analogy. If you're going to look for a guy in that price range, you're going to look at him and Leake and try to decide which one you like a little bit more. I don't feel strongly either way. Leake's been a little bit better, but I also believe in Porcello a little bit more. So
yeah, and he's got the better offense behind him, but he's also not a favorite. So they're kind of like, you look at all the factors, they're equal, but for different reasons almost. So yeah, I'm with you there. A guy that I'll be considering in a couple spots too. Next up, we've got Danny Duffy, who is $6,400 on DraftKings, a nice cheap price here, $7,400 on FanDuel, but Texas has been really good against lefties this year. They got the 5th highest team ISO at 172. They're 10th in WOBA. They also strike out over 21% of the time, but Danny Duffy, not a guy that strikes out a lot of batters. Usually really tough on left-handed bats throughout his career. Hasn't been particularly great against either this year.
Yep.
I mean, Danny Duffy's just not... I mean, he's obviously only ever a tournament option, and you get this... Now he's in Texas. He got smashed last time out by Cleveland. Game before that, he was really good against Detroit. Other than that, he's been about average. Not really a guy that I'm targeting. I mean, there's a couple bats with Texas that I like to play, but I don't think I'll have any Danny Duffy tonight. I'm just not a big fan.
Yeah, I'm not either. I'm going to avoid him for the most part. We have too many other options that I like here.
Yeah, he just seems about an average option, so no thanks. CC Sabathia is next. This guy has just been the source of a lot of headaches for a lot of people this year. He's $7,300 on FanDuel, 78 on DraftKings. And, I mean, he's just a guy that you can't love. He's a lefty going against Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay is a team that, as we know, hasn't been particularly good this season against lefties or righties. A little bit below league average. Striking out 23.8% of the time against lefties. But you got some guys like Evan Longoria, your BVP special of the day. Absolutely owned CC Sabathia in his career. He's owned most lefties in his career. So he's certainly in play there. Just not a lot of other guys that stick out for this Tampa Bay offense for me. But at the same time, I don't have much faith in CC Sabathia at this point in his career. So I do think he gets hit. I don't know how hard he gets hit. I love Evan Longoria tonight. I'm just not playing CC Sabathia.
Yeah, I'm not excited about him either. Not a favorite in this game. He's looked okay lately, but not quite enough of a discount to get me excited about him. He's just been exactly okay for the most part.
Yep.
He had that one really nice start against Detroit when everyone was like against him and stacking Detroit and stuff like that, and he looked pretty good over 8 innings. But even in that game, he only struck out 5 guys. He had a lot of batted ball success. The strikeouts just aren't there anymore, and without that, I mean, he's just trying to get through games instead of like aggressively attacking them, and I'm just not excited about pitching a guy like that.
Yeah, completely with you there. He's a guy I'd rather pick on than target, so I like that. Next up, Willie Peralta, $7,300 DraftKings, $7,000 FanDuel. And this is a guy that you love to pick on with left-handed bats because he's had awful splits throughout his career. Left-handed batters, I guess at bats as well. But he had a really, really good game last time at home at Miller Park against the Dodgers last time out. He went 7 innings, had 6 Ks, gave up 2 runs. I mean, scattered 7 hits, but I feel like that was more fluky than anything because I just don't think he's much above an average pitcher. I think maybe some people look at him in this game and maybe target him, but he's a guy that I just don't like. I don't think he's that good. He's got a below average strikeout rate. He doesn't walk a lot of guys. He's got a nice ground ball rate, but like I said, awful against lefties throughout his career. So not a lot of left-handed bats you're really worried about, though. On the White Sox, we got like Adam LaRoche you're considering, who may be in the lineup instead of Jose Abreu today with no DH after he fouled a ball off his foot. That's a different story either way. I mean, if Jose Abreu's out of this lineup, I think he's an okay tournament option, but he just doesn't have a ton of upside.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not excited about him really at all. I mean, we saw him make his first start. He got, 4 2/3, I think, in that first start.
Yeah.
He looked okay. I mean, maybe they stretch him out to 5, 6 innings. I can't see him going more than 6, really, though. So it's just, I don't know, not a guy that I'm targeting, really. I mean, he's decently cheap on FanDuel, decently cheap on DraftKings, but not cheap enough. I mean, there's guys that are cheaper that I like a little bit more. And if I'm going to take that risk, I'm going to try and get as much cap as I can for the rest of my positions.
Absolutely with you there. Two other guys that we're going to talk about here. Ubaldo Jimenez is an interesting guy who got off to a really good start. We've seen that the guy has great stuff when he's pitching well, but we've seen that he's also wild. Has done a good job at keeping the walks down, comparatively speaking, throughout his career. I mean, usually around a 13% walk rate, under 10 so far this year. Got hit pretty hard by the Mets last time out. Really just threw too many pitches. Only made it through 4 innings. But, I mean, his numbers so far in the season, 62% ground ball rate. He's pitching okay, but he's just not a guy that I trust. Now you get, he should get some run support because Marco Estrada on the other side gives up a ton of home runs. You got to like these Baltimore bats. So you like that he should get some run support. If he pitches deep enough, maybe he gets the win. But he's just not a guy that I like to target a whole lot. And he's facing this Toronto offense who knows what's going to happen with Jose Bautista. Maybe he's still afraid of him and won't play tonight, whatever that may be. But 8.5 run total. He's a slight favorite at home, minus 125. I don't know what to think about Jimenez. Not a guy that I love at all. And I just don't trust him, even a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a tournament play at best is the problem. Yeah. And, I mean, he's a kind of expensive one, too. He kind of fits in that same problem as, like, Estrada and Peralta that we were just talking about, where they're priced just low enough where you can kind of get a little bit excited about them, but they don't give you enough on a daily basis. Like we talked about, Estrada's just coming out of the bullpen recently. I mean, Peralta went, 8 innings last game and still only struck out 6 guys.
Yeah.
Like, we're kind of in that same situation where, I mean, Ubaldo's looked great in a couple of games. I mean, against the White Sox, he struck out 6 guys in 7 innings, and I think he kept them scoreless in that game. Did a really similar thing against Toronto, I think, last time he faced them. So, I mean, there's some upside there, it feels like. It's just his downside is so much that it makes you not trust the good games.
Yeah.
Because it feels like he's getting lucky more in those games. When you look at his last 5 games, and he has 2 monster games where he threw 7 innings, got the win, struck out a decent number of guys, and then you look at his other 3 games, and he was just awful. Under 4 innings in 2 of them. The other one, he went 5 innings. Just, like, really hard to feel good about it.
Yeah, he seems like, I mean, really any day, the most volatile pitcher on the board. Like you said, he's got big-time upside, but his floor is very, very low. I mean, his 2 games against Toronto, if you're looking DraftKings points, 34.6 and 9.9. So, I mean, when he's good, and when he's bad, he's awful. Maybe a single bullet in a tournament on DraftKings where his price is okay at 6,100. He's the 3rd cheapest pitcher on the board. But not a guy that I'm going to have as my only pitcher on FanDuel tonight, I don't think. All right, one other guy I want to talk about, and this guy's interesting. This is a guy that I still think is an awful pitcher. I also don't like to target people against the Kansas City Royals. Colby Lewis, though, has pitched well this season. He's still an underdog to Danny Duffy, 8-run total here in Texas. This is a guy who's been just one of the worst in the game against lefties throughout his career, just been absolutely terrible. He's pitched well so far this season. I mean, at Houston, he went 8 innings, 6 innings, 8 Ks against Oakland.
Yeah.
Wasn't great in his other starts. I'm not a believer in Colby Lewis. I will still be getting some Royals bats. You will never see Colby Lewis on one of my rosters because I think that the guy's a terrible pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked pretty good over the last couple games, but he's another guy that was not good over the couple games before that.
Yep.
So, I mean, for what his price is at, I'd rather pitch someone like Ubaldo or, I mean, I'm just not going to play him. I don't feel good about it either. I can't, I just can't get excited about playing him. There's too many guys around that price range that I feel like have a little bit more upside and are going to burn me less. So I'm kind of ignoring that. There's a couple other guys that are just better plays in that price range, really, is all it is to me. I mean, I'm going to look at Ubaldo. I'm going to look at probably Estrada for a little bit cheaper if I have to against Baltimore. I know they've been struggling lately. Maybe even Willie Peralta, who we mentioned against the White Sox, is a favorite. As much as I like Samardzija, I don't mind Peralta as a favorite there for the same price. I just can't get excited about him.
Yeah, and the Royals, one of the most efficient teams against righties this season. They're only walking 5.8% time, which you don't like, but only a 16.4% strikeout rate. They've got a nice team ISO of 147. They're fifth in the league overall in WOBA against righties. Their team speed is just off the charts. All these guys run. You got guys like Garrett Cole going under the radar. He's mashing righties. Everyone's hitting righties. He's terrible against lefties. There's just too many good left-handed bats in this lineup. There's no way I'm touching Colby Lewis. He's not a guy that I'll ever play, but especially tonight against the Royals.
Right.
All right, that's going to wrap things up for us here. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. As always, lots of great content for tonight's slate at dailyfantasycafe.com, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.